It's early November and my apple trees are loaded with apples. And so what's a better time to take care of the apples is right before Thanksgiving. And I'm going to be making some apple pie filling, which you can use for apple pies, apple crisp, apple crumbles, just about any type of dessert. I went ahead and peeled 8 cups of apples. I sliced these up in quarters. Usually I'd only maybe do these in halves. I sliced them up thinner because they got to go in the Harvest Right tray, and we don't want a whole bunch of big pieces of apples in there because we need all the room in the world. And then for the syrup, I have 1 cup sugar, 1 cup water, 1 teaspoon nutmeg, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 2 tablespoons cornstarch. And of course, the cornstarch was dissolved in about a 1/4 cup of water to mix that in, and then about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I went ahead and thickened this up, and you can kind of see how thick that is. But this is going to be our syrup. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to combine the syrup and the apples all together. And this is enough to probably make 2 to 3 apple pies, depending on how much you want to put on your pies. Now normally, you really wouldn't have to cook the syrup. I did it because I needed to dissolve the cornstarch. Plus, I needed to add and factor in the extra water. Normally, you would not put this much water into an apple pie filling. But because this is going to be freeze-dried, we're not concerned about the extra water because the extra water is going to sublimate out. So we're just going to mix this up just a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and get our Harvest Right trays. And we're going to go ahead and put the apples in the syrup in the tray. And we're going to fill this tray all the way full. So this is virtually 8 cups of apples that we're putting into this single tray. And you can always quadruple this recipe if you want to do an entire batch of apple pie filling. Okay, so you can see the syrup is down on the bottom, the apples are up on top, and I still have plenty of room here. Now, one of the problems with sugar when it comes to freeze drying is sugar, just like you do with Skittles, crystallizes when it goes under a vacuum and when it's heated. And the last thing we want to do is have this apple pie filling basically explode and grow crystals all over the inside of your freeze dryer. We already have 1 cup sugar and 1 cup water in this mixture. Well, what I'm going to do is before this goes into the freeze dryer, now you can either do this by pre-freezing or you can do this when you load your food into the freeze dryer. But I'm going to take an extra cup of water and I'm going to pour the extra cup of water onto the apples. The extra cup of water is going to give the sugar room to grow the crystals so we can control the growth and it doesn't just explode out of your tray. Now I'm not going to pour this in right now because this is all about half full. If I pour this in now and try to walk it down to my freezer, I'm just going to spill it all over the place. So I'm going to stick this into my freezer and then I'm going to pour the water on top of it. If you don't pre-freeze your food, you can slide this right into the Harvest Right freeze dryer, pull it out just a little bit, and then pour your water onto the apples and syrup. And that will just kind of give it some more room for the sugar crystals to grow and to control the growth of the sugar crystals so it doesn't explode in your tray. I'm at my freezer, so I'm going to go ahead and put my apples in the freezer. I'm just going to pull this out just a little bit, and I'm going to take the water, and I'm going to go ahead and just pour this water inside the tray. Tip up the tray a little bit so it can kind of move back and forth. And that's it. I'm going to quadruple this recipe, put 3 more trays of pie filling in the freezer, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead and throw it in my freeze dryer. When I did this experiment, I contemplated on how to line the trays for the apple pie filling. So this tray right here had no lining whatsoever. This tray right here had parchment paper, and this tray right here had wax paper. And I think I actually prefer the tray without any lining at all. Now, you could probably use a silicone mat, but because this was a liquid, the liquid would probably go underneath the silicone mat and probably wouldn't be beneficial. But at least with this method right here, I can go ahead and scrape this up and out of the tray. It lifts off pretty easy. It doesn't stick that much. Now, with the parchment paper, the parchment paper comes out, but the parchment paper still kind of sticks to all the sugars and everything. I mean, I can take it off in some sheets and in pieces, but it's going to be a little bit labor intensive to take all this paper off and not have it get mixed in with my filling, my apple pie filling. So parchment paper didn't work all that great. So let's take a look at the wax paper. The wax paper kind of fared the same as the parchment paper. It kind of comes off in pieces, but I'm going to have to sit here and take all the little pieces that get stuck behind so I don't end up having wax paper in my apple pie filling. So I'm sure this was going to make some comments from the viewers about what to use. So the wax paper didn't fare too well. The parchment paper didn't fare too well. But just putting it in by itself without any paper at all seemed to work out the best. I've emptied 3 of my trays into this bowl, and this is the last tray. And I just want to make a little bit of a note, but I have a bunch of these spatulas. They're a metal thin spatula like this, and I've found these to be really, really handy when it comes to freeze-dried food, because not only can you scrape the bottoms of the trays with these really easy, but if you do use parchment or wax paper, these are really easy to slide along the back end, the back side of the food to take off the parchment or the wax paper if it sticks. So just a little thought, these are really handy little spatulas to have. So here's my apple filling right here. We're just going to go ahead and smash it in with the rest of the apple filling here. The ratio you want to use with the freeze-dried apple pie material comes down to, you want to use 2 ounces of freeze-dried apple pie or whatever kind of filling you're going to be using. But I'm going to put 2 ounces into this cup, and I'm using a scale to do so. Okay, so there's 2 ounces, and we're going to add a 1/2 cup of water. And once this rehydrates itself, this will give us 1 cup of ready-to-use pie filling that we can put into our pies. And so this right here is 20 ounces, which is about 2 cups of apple pie filling. So if I do this and double it twice, that'll be enough for my apple pie. So just remember, 2 ounces of freeze-dried apple material, or I should say 2 ounces of pie filling, and a 1/2 cup of water will yield 1 cup of finished material. And you'll need to mix this probably for about 2 minutes or so. You can just let it sit. This rehydrates pretty quick. So there you go, ready for the pie. When bagging this material up, I would use at least a 7 mil bag. If you don't have a 7 mil bag, I would double bag it. The reason being is that some of these edges on these apple pieces can get pretty sharp, And because I vacuum pack everything, when that squishes everything down from the vacuum, it's easy for one of these apple pieces to make a hole in the Mylar if you don't have a 7 mil bag. But I'll show you what I mean by double bagging. So I'm just going to go ahead here and fill this up. So I have this one all filled up, ready to go. Now, if I didn't have a 7 mil bag, what you do, you just take a 1-gallon Ziploc bag, and you can take a knife or a pair of scissors or whatever, and I'm just going to take this and I'm going to poke a bunch of holes in the bag without poking holes in me. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill this bag up and do the Ziploc thing. Then I'm going to get my bag, and I'm just going to pretend this is say a 3.5 mil bag. And I'm going to take this bag and put it in that bag. So now I have a bag inside of a bag, and the holes that I poked in this inner bag into the Ziploc bag will allow the air to escape when I vacuum pack this. This will give a thinner walled bag some extra protection from the sharp pieces of these apple pieces or any other sharp thing you might want to bag, for example, lasagna, for example, from poking holes into your bag. And then you can just drop the oxygen absorber inside. You can either put the oxygen absorber inside the Ziploc or just on top of this one. It really doesn't matter. It'll work just as well. And since I'm vacuum packing it, it's just an insurance policy. This is what it looks like after it comes out of my chamber. So just have to come over here and to seal that corner. And I have all my apple pie filling ready to go into my inventory. And this right here will make about 2 pies that I can enjoy during the zombie apocalypse.